Growth stalls because we perfect our agencies. So past your first million, am I cut out for this life at all? Once you get past that, and then you stop and there's this fucking ceiling. And it's because you're perfect as you are. The problem you've got to solve for is not how do we keep growing like that. It's how do we change when we're already perfect.
Welcome to another episode of the Scaling Fastlane. I'm your host, Valerie Booth. In this episode, we're joined by Agency Ventures Aggregator CSO, Felix Velarde, a visionary in business scaling and strategy. Felix shares his groundbreaking 2Y 3X program, a transformative approach to rapid business growth. He'll discuss the intricacies of the strategy map and how it revolutionizes how businesses achieve their ambitious goals. Whether you're a budding entrepreneur or a seasoned business leader, this episode offers insights into scaling your business efficiently and effectively. Take advantage of these game-changing strategies that could redefine your approach to business success.
One of the things that I love doing is telling everybody how to do what I've learned. Most of what I've learned by screwing things up and getting things wrong and breaking things and tripping over, which I'm still doing, as many of you heard yesterday. Running an agency is kind of trial and error and incredibly stressful, and all the responsibility's on you, and nobody else wants to take any fucking responsibility, and delegating to people and smart and all of that crap. It doesn't really work because when you tell people what to do, they kind of resist. I joined Vistage at one point. Who's heard of Vistage? It's a really good general CEO mentoring kind of organization. You turn up and you complain at each other about your latest problems and you go home. And I found that I was learning stuff there, and I was going back to the office. I was reading, they were telling me to read Jim Collins' Good to Great, or Patrick Lencioni, or some great book, yeah? And I'd go back to the office and I'd say, I've learned something new. We've got a brand new way of doing things. This is the most efficient way of doing, I don't know what, interviewing. And I'd tell everybody that we were doing it new. And people would sort of look at me and they go, then they roll their eyes a bit, and then they say, okay, boss. And you'd see them paying lip service to these changes and things, but then they go back to the old ways of doing things because that's the way that they do things. It works, it's reliable. I eventually found out that these, every time we came back from Vistage with a new idea, these were called Felix's change grenades. Because I'd come into the office and I'd lob one over my shoulder and say, right? And they became inured to it, right? And almost immune to these change grenades. And I realized that when you are the founder and the chief strategist and the salesperson and the person who tells it, the font of all knowledge, somebody comes to you and says, what do I do about this? And you give them the answer because it's quicker than trying to coach them, right? And you become this sort of weird kind of bottlenecky genie at the top of this cone, and you're trying to move upwards as a company by pushing downwards on responsibility on your people. And I discovered that this didn't work, basically. I discovered that you could probably grow by 20% one year doing that, but then the wind would blow wrong or somebody would bomb something or whatever, and you'd lose that 20%. And so you do this horrible feast and famine. And eventually, I realized that there's got to be a different way of doing this, and I figured out what that different way was. And in the end, I had 6 agencies of my own. I ran an agency group and put together 12 agencies and grew that and was quite successful. And then I retired, sold everything, buggered off around the world a couple of times and had a lovely time. And then came back and started to put together what is now the 2Y3X program. And Scale at Speed is the manual for the 2Y3X program. It is the only reason that I still appear on podcasts and interviews is because I appeared on a podcast talking about the 2Y3X program. Somebody phoned me up and said, you've got to write a book, which, by the way, took 4 years to write. And there are still typos in it. So I'm going to teach you how to do what I learned. What's amazing about what I learned is that by being lazy and not doing stuff, by finding a way of getting the people around me to want to make change themselves, I discovered that we could scale at speed, and that reliably by putting in place this framework, which is a terribly light touch framework, it's 1 day a month, we could double or triple the revenue of a company reliably in 2 years. hence the name 2Y3X. Does what it says on the tin. So I'm going to teach you about firstly, the central tool, which is called a strategy map. And a strategy map is not an original name, and it's not even an original tool. Capgemini did the first really comprehensive strategy map. They called it a transformation map, and it was for 5-year implementations of new software platforms in enterprise, so 2,000-person companies. They stole it from Kaplan and Norton's Balanced Scorecard, which is a work of genius. It's a brilliant, brilliant book that took me about 10 times before I understood what it was talking about. It's an almost impossibly impenetrable book, but it's brilliant when you do get it. But it took me about 5 years of rereading it and trying to understand it before I finally twigged, which has happened a lot with me. It took me 16 years to get past page 20 of The Prince. I don't know if anybody's read The Prince. It took me 16 years, and actually I had to watch a mini-series on Sky TV about the Borgias before I understood what it was talking about. There's been quite a lot of talk so far already about discount factors, yes? Yeah? So when I'm looking at an agency, when I go into an agency, and bearing in mind, I've sold 6 of my own agencies, I've bought 12 agencies, I've then chaired another, dozen agencies or so, and sold 4 or 5 of those. So I've got an unusual amount of M&A experience as a founder and CEO. So these are the principal ones that I looked at when I was in my the core of my agency career. And this one here, scalability, was the one that always caused me the most problems. Because I was starting these small agencies and I was growing them up to a point, and then they stopped, and I couldn't figure out why I kept hitting this glass ceiling. I thought, well, is it because I'm not smart enough? Or is it because there's some secret? You know, when you're a teenager and you think there's a secret that grown-ups know, right? And this is what I felt like as an early entrepreneur, was there's some secret that nobody's telling me about how to grow your company. You know, I'll tell you what the secret is. Because irritatingly enough, there is actually a secret. I still haven't grown up, so I haven't got that one yet. And it's the answer to this question. Growth stalls. I'm going to put the clicker down for a minute so I don't distract myself. Growth stalls because we perfect our agencies for the size they are at now. You get past your first million, right, which is just basically, am I cut out for this life at all? Do I have product market fit? Can I find a client? Can I sell stuff? And have I got a couple of mates that I can create an agency with? That gets you about $1 million, right? Once you get past that, you shoot all the way up to 2.5 million or 2 million in revenue, and it's quite easy. And then you stop, and there's this fucking ceiling. And it's because you figure out how to deliver what your clients want at that size. And you've probably got a dozen clients, right? And if you've got a dozen clients and you're a couple of million, then your clients are probably $150,000 or $150,000 each, right? And so you figure out how to deliver $150,000 accounts, work, right? Whatever your discipline is. And you figure out what kind of people you need and what kind of training they need and what kind of processes you need and what kind of reporting you need and how much your clients need patting on the head and what kind of sales process you need to replace the clients that leave when they want somebody who can deliver twice as much, but you don't have the processes. You optimize for this size that you're at. And then what happens is you get stuck because the senior team that has done this amazing job of optimizing it, making you perfect as a $2 million agency, they don't want to change it, right? You want to be a $4 million agency and you want 400 grand clients, you've got to change almost everything about the way that you do your business. You've got to change your sales processes, your delivery processes, your project management, your reporting, everything, right? probably going to need to professionalize account management. You're going to start thinking about CLTV and shit like that. But that's a different company. And you're stuck here, you're optimized. And your team is sitting there saying, well, I'm not changing anything. Boss is going to come in and is going to say, I've thought of a new idea, and I'm going to go, change grenade. Right? You don't change. So you get stuck. And it's incredibly frustrating. The number of times I've hit that bloody ceiling over and over and over again, not knowing why. And it's because you're perfect as you are, which is a really interesting insight. Because if you understand that, then the problem you've got to solve for is not how do we keep growing like that, it's how do we change when we're already perfect. And if you attack that problem, then the answer comes as, why don't we get people who are not the senior management team to design the next version of the agency that's bigger and better and has the capacity to deal with bigger clients and win clients and so on? Why don't we get somebody else to design the next version of our agency? And that insight is what powered 2Y3X and still does, and is the basis of this book. Now, a couple of other interesting insights came out at that point as well. One of them is, I'm the bottleneck. You are the bottleneck. How many of you know that you're the bottleneck? How many of you think you're not the bottleneck? Good for you, Griffin. I know I'm the bottleneck, right? And the reason I'm the bottleneck is because all decisions come up to me. And there's a brilliant quote by Bill Marriott of Marriott Hotels, who said that there are 7 most powerful words for the leader. I don't know, what do you think? Somebody comes up to you, they say, boss, I've got a problem. What should I do about it? And you say, I don't know, what do you think? And they say, oh, that's why I came to you. And you say, oh, go away, come back when you've had to think about it and tell me what you think. And they go away and they come back. Hopefully they've come up with a sensible idea. And you say, okay, which of your 2 ideas do you think is going to work best? And they'll say B. And you say, great, go off and try it. Right? And this is how you teach people to take responsibility. This is management 101, right? Delegation. In fact, Harvard Business Review used to publish a big red book. And in the big red book, it would have the top 10 management tips. And tip number 1 was, don't let them put the monkey on your back. Has anybody read that before? Yeah. They're coming to you with a problem. They want to put it on your back. Eventually, you have a stack of monkeys on your back. You get to the point where you hate your job. You want to die. You want to kill people. And if anybody comes up to you ever again and says, boss, can I have 5 minutes? You are going to bring in a machete, right? I hated that moment in my career. So when you understand that you are the bottleneck, then the idea of finding another team, another bunch of people in the business who you might be able to get together and say, hey, we want to design a better version of the business. Can we do it together? Rather than I have designed a better version of the business, go off and do it, to which you get resistance, then you're increasing your own bandwidth. There you go. This is to scale, by the way. This is a CEO to scale. And when you multiply that 5 times, the volume of stuff that you can get done is enormous. It's not just the throughput, it's the amount. And that bandwidth is everything. How many of you spend too much time in the weeds? Right, this side of the room they're all cool. We all spend too much time in the weeds. I spend too much time. I'm a fucking management consultant, right? I know my shit. I too spend too much time in the weeds. But this helps. And you know the adage, find people who are better at it than you are and let them get on with it. Well, in your business, you've got superstars. I know that quite a few of you have got C players. I'm not going to ask you to put your hands off. By the way, has anybody fired their C players since we had that conversation this morning? Everybody's going to be so much happier when you do. How many of you have got A players in your business? All of you, right? I know that you two only have 2 people in your business, but... 10. Fantastic. Those A players are the people that you want in your growth team. And one of the things I found really interesting about this team is these people is that because you're trying to avoid the people at the top who've got vested interest in the status quo, because why would you change something that works, right? It gives you the latitude to start thinking about your A players who may be at the beginning of their career, who may be sitting in a basement somewhere being a dev, right? Who may not have management responsibility. And we'll come back to that in a minute. So, if you can give your team the opportunity to design a better version of the agency and break it down into little bits and implement those bits one bit at a time, kind of like building blocks, you can create scalable processes. So it's not particularly scalable. When you're 100 people, that's not going to work, is it? But if you put in place a scalable hiring process, yeah, with a CRM system and a spreadsheet and a set of rules, and if you understand what your core values are and you've written them down, you can ask those questions in the interview. You don't have to carry through to second interview people who don't meet your values. Therefore, you're never going to have any C players. And you have a process, and that's scalable, right? It might take you 3 months to put that process into place. That might be your first building block. And so we break down all of the things that you need to do in order to create a scalable business into small tasks, and we do them, we start building them, putting them in place, and it takes a little while, but over time you build something that truly is scalable, that scales up. And that's how we do 2 3 is we take big asked task of changing the business wholesale, we break it down into blocks. And I'll tell you how to do that now. It comes down to something called the strategy map. And this strategy map is really, 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 really simple. I mean, absurdly simple. It looks like this. In the top right-hand side, we have some goals. And those goals are a financial goal and a positioning goal. What kind of company do we want to be? And a culture goal. What kind of place do we want to be to work? Right? Now, it's legitimate in business to have any kind of culture you want that is congruent with your personal values, right? I've worked with clients where one of their culture is built around hiring students who are in college down the road, at the university down the road, to populate their call center for insurance sales, right? And their culture is basically pay them low, get them in, turn them over fast once you break them, right? Now, for me, that's horrible. I don't want to work there. But for the students, it's brilliant because they don't have to think about their work. They learn the script and then they get pissed, drunk, because they're students. But you need to understand what your culture needs to be, right? And one of the markers, just as an example here, I've got a 9.5 ENPS score, so 95% staff net promoter score. Now, it could be staff satisfaction score. It could be Ad Age top 50 places to work. It could be all sorts of different things. But we need to write it down as a goal, because if you don't have a goal, you don't know when you've scored, right? Now, we then map this over 3 years. So we want a big goal, set of goals, And we want those big goals 3 years away so that they're achievable, but not so far away that the world will have completely changed by the time we get there, right? We want them ambitious, but not so close that they are unachievable or too intimidating. So 3 years seems to be the perfect distance away for what Jim Collins called big, hairy, audacious goals. And then the strategy map is broken down into year 3, year 2, and year 1, kind of simplistically. And then for the sake of convenience, we break it down into people, clients, sales and marketing, business processes, and corporate and financial. And we do that so that we can start thinking about how to work backwards. If we're doing $2 million EBIT in 3 years' time, by the end of the third year, and say you're doing $500,000 EBIT now, who's doing $500,000 EBIT? Yeah? Cool. So if you're doing $500,000 EBIT, that's 4 times your EBITDA in 3 years, right? How many people have you got now? Yeah, whoever put their hands up. 11. So 4 times 11 is?
44.
So how many people are you going to have at the end of year 3?
I don't know.
Roughly?
Oh, wait. What was it? It's 4 times 11. Oh, 4 times 11, 44? Yeah. I went to public school. Sorry.
Task number 1, learn maths. Well, if you've got 44 people, right, you've got 11 people now, 44 people, that's quite a big change, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So you're going to need training programs and hiring programs and recruitment things, and you're going to need continuous professional development and job scorecards. A whole bunch of stuff that you're going to need to shunt into the people stuff. And a couple of processes in here about, how do you identify when you're going to need to hire more people? Make sense?
Yeah.
Right. Suddenly we're starting to populate this thing by starting at the end. We started with 2 million EBIT. Now, we haven't even thought about whether they're happy or not, right? So what's happening in the third year to make them happy?
Elevated them, probably. Tying them into compensation, elevated them.
Great, lots of different things that you could do, right? What's the first thing that you need to do in order to figure out whether or not they're happy? Yeah, good. Okay, just checking. So this is a strategy map. And you can put whatever your numbers are, whatever is really ambitious. In fact, I'll talk about that in a sec. Top 10 award, whatever the marker is for your industry or for your, if you like, about what, the best search agency in the Midwest. I don't know. And the reason that you don't just have a financial one is because if you just have a financial one, then the answer is going to be stop working with stop having an agency, go and do an OnlyFans site because you earn more profit that way more quickly. Or buy paper clips in China and sell them to, Now, the reason I talk about ambitiousness here is because of this thing, goal setting theory. Goal setting theory is it's awesome. And there's this guy called Dr. Edwin Locke. And Edwin Locke, about 45 or 50 years ago, came up with goal setting theory. And he basically decided that it would be interesting to test whether or not reasonable goals are more achievable than challenging goals. And his thesis was that the more challenging it is, the more likely you are to succeed. And he spent the last 45 years proving it. And what he's proven actually is the more extreme the goal, the more likely you are to achieve it. And his rationale, there's lots of different layers to this, and I'm simplifying wildly, but more or less he says, the more challenging the goal, the less likely you are going to be able to address it by just rolling your sleeves up and working a bit harder and hiring a few more people. If you've got a really challenging goal, you're going to have to come up with a plan. And if you come up with a plan, and you follow the plan, then you're more likely to achieve your goal. Really simple, right? It's like, duh, why didn't we figure this out? It turns out he spent 45 years battling people to get this idea accepted. But I'll give you an example. Right? You said you're doing $500,000 profit.
More, but yeah.
Oh, well, okay. Call it 750?
Sure.
Right. If I said to you, okay, how are you going to get that to 10 million profit in 3 years? Yeah? What have you just spent the last 2 days doing?
Learning.
Yeah, how to do that, right? You say, well, shit to it, I'm not going to do that by hiring more salespeople.
Right.
Yeah? Fuck it, I'll go out and buy another company. And you two seem to look like you get on. You know, why not? You might be halfway there. It's brilliant. He also said that when you set goals, heroic goals, heroes step up. What he meant by that was A players really like to be challenged. Players do not like to coast. Yeah, they are not the people who turn up at 9 o'clock and they clock off at 4:30 and they don't care about their job. A players are the sort of people who want you to say, here's a really tough problem. Because then they thrive, they bristle, it's brilliant. Goal setting theory is amazing. So we set really challenging goals up in the top right-hand corner of our strategy map. And then we assemble our growth lab team. And the reason it's not called the senior management team is because the senior management team has got vested interest in the status quo. The growth lab team, bless you, the growth lab team is drawn from all over the business. They're the superstars. They're the person that, you know who the superstars are in your business, right? Who employs more than 15 people here? Right. If I said to you, name 5 superstars in your business, right?
Yeah.
You know who they are.
Joy, Tyler.
Exactly, right? We all know who the superstars are. Guess what? The person who sits next to them also knows they're a superstar. And when that person gets drawn onto the growth lab team, the person who's sitting next to them now has a representative at their level in the change-making department. So when the changes come out of the growth lab team, it's so much easier to get buy-in from the whole agency because everybody's got a friend on the growth lab team, right? My interests are represented. The interests of us who live in the basement because we're coders or whatever it is, yeah? It's wonderful. So you get this kind of sort of, holistic kind of adoption of change. It stops being resisted. We are making the change ourselves. Here is a growth lab team. I don't know why I put that in. But they're really nice people. Yes?
Is it ideal to have some young newbies, not that experienced, that are
Totally.
superstars? Because otherwise, that group of employees isn't going to feel represented.
Right, exactly. So, right, in your superstar group, right, in your group of superstars, there's probably one who's really annoyingly chirpy and opinionated, who is like 12 and a half.
I think of a 2-year and 23-year-old.
Right, completely. But you know that one day they are going to be running their own agency and it's going to outdo yours and it's going to be really obnoxious, right? They should be on the team. Because wouldn't you want to have those people? That brain trust, yeah? For the first time in years, we are going to be working with the superstars in our business again. Yeah, not just the people who've been there the longest. Which is, I don't know about you. The enthusiasm goes. Yeah, when you've been running an agency for yonks, it kind of becomes a bit of a drag sometimes. It's like it's all your fucking responsibility, all the bloody time. You're the one who has to dip into your pockets when somebody hasn't paid on time and you've still got to pay Christmas bonuses and all of that crap, yeah? You don't get to work with the smartest and brightest people. Sometimes you might do it on a pitch. But on your business, wouldn't that be amazing? It's electrifying. So, to illustrate the way that this works, we start with year 3. Now, if you want to sell your agency in 3 years' time, who's going to be running the agency? Wouldn't it be great if the Growth Lab team would? Let's have the Growth Lab team in charge in year 3. So what has to happen in year 2 with that Growth Lab team?
Boss.
Sorry?
They need to be the bosses, right?
Well, not necessarily, but they need to certainly practice, right?
Yeah.
Training.
Yeah. Practice, training, CPD. Year 1, you need to identify who they are, right? This year, now. Let's assemble the team. Avengers, there's a Marvel gag in there. Year 3, if you're getting a 95% staff satisfaction score, your culture's got to be absolutely bloody amazing. So you need only A players, because that will make an amazing culture. You want an incentive program, as you said earlier. This year, we need a hiring strategy. We need to go off and read Who, the A Method for Hiring by Jeff Smart and Randy Street and implement it. We need to set up a continuous professional development program or a training program. Yeah? Coaching for people, coaching for us as leaders. So you can see that by working backwards from the end, we end up with a bunch of tasks that we need to do now, this year. And in fact, we can forget what we need to do in year 2 and year 3. But broadly speaking, if we do year 1, by the time we get to year 2, we'll be ready for it and we can crack on with that. And we do that across the whole piece. In the book, there are fully completed examples and so on. And then you start addressing all the tasks in year 1. And then you move forward to year 2, and then you move forward to year 3, and then guess what? You hit your targets. Tim?
So would you say for most businesses it's the same, where year 1 is going to be IDGLT, year 2?
No. I mean, in my own experience, there are about 70 different tasks that are the pool that year 1 is drawn from. And year 1, generally speaking, it turns out to be about 20 tasks. And if you've got 5 people on the Growth Lab team and 20 tasks, that's 1 per quarter per year, per person, right? Isn't that cool, right? So suddenly we've got a cadence. That cadence is interesting because if we set 1 task for each person, for each quarter, we can break that down and we can de-risk change. We de-risk change by having month 1 be a research month. Go out and find what other people do that's best practice. Figure out what doesn't work. Read some books. Go and talk to your mates at the other agency. Right? Come back, present your conclusions to your peer group, your Growth Lab team, and recommend a course of action. Great. So at the end of month 1, we have a series of presentations on the roadmap day, and we start off on month 2. Month 2 is prototype. Okay, let's try it. Came up with a solution, a proposal. Let's try it. Now, if the prototype doesn't work, great, we're not implementing a change that is not going to work in the agency because we prototyped it, it didn't work, we can start again. But if it works, then in month 3 we can roll it out across the agency. And guess what? We now have a new hiring process. And we have started those building blocks of changing our agency so that it is scalable. And what happens when you've built those building blocks is suddenly you find that your agency has gone through that transformation without you pushing that transformation on anybody. In fact, all you've done is ask people to design the future version, and you've given them some training wheels and a cadence, and you've let them get on with it. And one of the things that I love about management is that when it's done properly, it's not about instruction. People are not asking you to tell them how to do what they're supposed to do. People want your permission to do it their way. And this framework gives you that permission. Yes?
Where would you put product development or R&D into the map here?
I would probably stick it somewhere in sales and marketing.
Really?
Yeah, because ultimately it's response to what clients that we already have want and what clients that are out there might be asking for. So it's a sales and marketing function in the context of the strategy map. What the strategy map doesn't do is tell you how to do the job. The strategy map is about how to implement change. Yeah, you are experts at whatever it is that you do. I'm never going to be an expert in that. So I don't need to address that. You carry on being experts. That's your day job.
Right, so just because it's in the sales and marketing part of the map doesn't mean the sales and marketing leader will necessarily build or implement.
Brilliant question. What's really interesting about this is you're asking people who don't have any experience in some of these areas to come up with a solution that is going to be better than the one that we've got that is being run by an expert. So hiring process, for example, you probably have an HR person who runs your existing one, right? Yeah? So how are you going to get that hiring person, that HR person, to agree to a new process?
Peer pressure from the GLT team.
Ask them for their help and their opinion, right? The easiest way of diffusing any kind of ownership situation is to ask for help, right? If I want you to do my job for me, I'm going to say, would you sit next to me and help me do this thing? You're the expert, right? It works. This whole thing works by giving people ownership of the solution. And pretty quickly in the GLT, because we're facilitating this, where we encourage people to get to the point where they realize that if they've got to come up with a solution and they want people to buy into it, they need to get those people to input into it, right? Now, the sort of the pitch to the company as a whole is, listen, you're the senior management team, you've got a day job, you can't afford to risk it, you don't want to change anything, we're going to go off, we're going to try this, we'll design some stuff, we'll ask your advice, we'll bring it to you, we'll test it, so that when it's ready, you can roll it out. A tested thing, where there's no risk. It's great. I don't have to do it, I'm the HR lead, I don't need to, I haven't got time to spend 3 months designing a new system, right? I'm too busy hiring people and firing those C players. All of these quadrants will be filled, okay? So you'll have 20 different tasks. Now, some of them are dependent, have codependencies, right? So, for example, we might realize that we need to come up with a new proposition. And if we have a new proposition, we also need a new website and some marketing collateral, some sales training and some lead gen, right? Well, what comes first? What do we need first?
You gotta have sales always first.
We're selling what? If you haven't got a proposition, you can't sell fuck all, right? Excuse my French. Right, come up with a new proposition. Then you can do the sales training. Then you can come up with a website that supports the sales. Then you can do the lead gen to drive people to the website so that they can get to the salespeople. And suddenly you've got your four quarters mapped out. And it feels like slow progress, but believe me, when you're in it and you've done 3 quarters and you've wrought fundamental change to the way that your business is being run, you're going to realize that one little step at a time gets you there so much faster than this year's plan is to do 20% more and we'll do a new website as well, which is the best that most of us get. Right? How many of you would like that in your business? Right? It's amazing what happens. Suddenly you get this, like, instead of you having to push everything, you get people pulling. That's amazing. It's the reason why you can triple in revenues, because they're going to take you there. Your job is to temper their enthusiasm, if anything. Anyway, I love it. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I know that the person on my team who works with you loves you too. So there. Now, one of the other consequences of this is that by the third quarter, you've stopped being the bottleneck. The team has come together. They are lifting the mantle of the responsibility of creating change in your business and creating scalability. And guess what? They become your succession team. And if you've got a succession team behind you, what does that mean you can do? Sell or buy. I mean, it's all well and good, and I know that we're all teaching you M&A and stuff, but the second that you get involved in M&A, it is the most seductive thing on earth, right? Your ship is going to be completely leaderless. Buying other agencies, doing M&A is wonderful and fun and strategic and engaging again in the same way that the first year was engaging. Exciting, flying by the seat of the pants. But unless you've got a team behind you carrying the weight of creating scalability and taking you through it, then you risk destroying your existing business. And having your succession team, the growth lab team, pulling the train for you allows you to work on strategic stuff. And that's the beauty of it. Allows you to do deals and to go international or to sell your agency and leave.
Thanks for listening to the Scaling Fastlane podcast. If you enjoyed this content and are looking for a more immersive experience, join us at the next Scale at Speed live event. It's packed with dynamic content, expert insights, and a room full of like-minded, action-oriented agency leaders. Come elevate your scaling journey in person. Visit scaleatspeedlive.com to ensure your spot today. We can't wait to see you there.